The story of Saint Teresa of Calcutta is a journey of faith and dedication to serving the most needy. Born Angees in 1910 in Macedonia, she was raised in a Catholic family and was deeply influenced by a life of prayer and charity. This spirit of generosity took root in her heart and would define her future path. As a child, Angees was sensitive to the suffering of others, and her mother, Drana, was a strong example of charity, always helping the poor in their community. This atmosphere of love for others deeply impacted her and nurtured a desire to dedicate her life completely to God. At 18, she decided to join religious life, following what she believed to be God's call. The young Angees was accepted into the Loreto Sisters congregation in Ireland, where she chose the religious name Teresa, in honor of Saint Teresa of Lisieux. This name was inspired by the French saint known for her little way, a spirituality of doing small actions with great love, a characteristic that would also mark the future saint's life. In 1929, Teresa was sent to India to teach at a school run by the Loreto Sisters in Calcutta. Although she loved teaching, she soon felt that this work was not enough to satisfy her spiritual hunger. The extreme poverty she witnessed on the streets of Calcutta deeply troubled her, and she began to sense that God was calling her to a greater mission. In 1946, during a train journey to a retreat in Darjeeling, Sister Teresa had a profound mystical experience. She felt a clear call from God to leave the comfort of the convent and serve the poorest of the poor, those literally dying on the streets. This was the beginning of a new chapter in her life. After much prayer and reflection, Teresa of Calcutta decided to follow what she called the call within the call. She sought and received permission from her superiors and the Pope to leave the convent and dedicate herself entirely to serving the marginalized. Wearing a simple white sari with blue borders, symbolizing purity and poverty, she embarked on her new mission. In 1948, Saint Teresa began her work on the streets of Calcutta, alone and with no resources. She learned the basics of nursing to care for the sick and began gathering the dying from the streets, offering them dignity in their final moments. Although many could not be saved physically, she ensured they died loved and accompanied. Quickly, other young women joined her cause. Teresa's determination and unwavering faith in God inspired those around her. In 1950, with Vatican approval, she founded the Missionaries of Charity, a religious order dedicated to serving the poorest of the poor, regardless of race or religion. The Missionaries of Charity took vows of poverty, chastity, obedience, and a special vow to serve the poor. They lived simply and relied entirely on divine providence. Teresa insisted that her sisters live like the poor, sharing in their suffering. This radical commitment to the needy attracted many to the order. One of Saint Teresa's first major projects was the House of the Dying. She transformed an abandoned Hindu temple into a place where the terminally ill could be cared for and die with dignity. This was not just about providing physical care, but also offering love and compassion to those who had no one else. The work of the Missionaries of Charity expanded rapidly. Within a few years, they had opened homes across India and in other countries, always focusing on caring for the poor and marginalized. Teresa of Calcutta became internationally recognized for her unconditional dedication to those on the fringes of society. Teresa's life was not without challenges. In addition to the physical difficulties of working among the poorest, she also endured a profound dark night of the soul. Personal letters revealed after her death showed that for decades she experienced a deep absence of feeling God's presence. Nevertheless, she continued her mission with unwavering faith, offering this spiritual suffering as a sacrifice. Despite this inner darkness, Teresa remained joyful and devoted. She believed that joy was a way of showing God's love, even in suffering. She often said, "Peace begins with a smile," and that, no matter the circumstances, it was essential to show Christ's love through joy. Her charitable work gained worldwide recognition, but Teresa always rejected any personal glory. She saw herself as a pencil in the hands of God, a simple tool through which he could write his message of love. For Teresa of Calcutta, everything she did was for Christ, and each act of service was an expression of her living faith. Humility was one of her deepest traits, and even when receiving honors, she always attributed her success to God's grace. In 1979, Teresa was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in recognition of her tireless work for the poor and marginalized. During her acceptance speech, she focused on the importance of charity and the value of human life. She used the platform to speak out against abortion, calling it the greatest destroyer of peace, as she believed that all life from conception was sacred. Even after receiving the Nobel Prize, Teresa of Calcutta remained committed to her simple lifestyle. She donated the prize money to the cause of the poor, refusing any personal luxury or honor. For her, the award was an opportunity to draw the world's attention to the need to love and care for the needy, but it did not change her dedication to living in poverty and simplicity. Saint Teresa of Calcutta was a tireless advocate for the dignity of life in all its stages. She saw the suffering of the poor and sick as an opportunity to serve Jesus, and she never hesitated to face extreme situations. Once she said, "People are not dying from lack of food, but from lack of love." This spiritual vision drove her mission. Her defense of life extended beyond the fight against abortion. She also opposed euthanasia and any practices that disrespected human life. To her, every person had infinite value, regardless of their health or economic status. This belief led her to found many hospices for the terminally ill, where they could receive care and attention until their final moments. Teresa's work expanded beyond India's borders. Her congregation grew, opening mission houses in more than 130 countries, helping millions of people around the world. Everywhere the missionaries of charity went, they carried the same spirit of simplicity, prayer, and service to the most needy. The missionaries didn't just provide food or medical care. They also offered spiritual and emotional support, treating each person as a beloved child of God. The homes Teresa founded were places of refuge, where the poor could find not only material help, but also dignity and compassion. Teresa's spirituality was rooted in the conviction that God was present in every human being. Teresa's relationship with prayer was vital to the strength of her work. She firmly believed that all her service to the poor was only possible through her union with Christ in prayer. The missionaries of charity, in addition to their intense charitable work, also spent hours daily in prayer and adoration of the Blessed Sacrament. It was from this spiritual life that they drew the strength to continue their arduous work. Throughout her life, Teresa of Calcutta was invited to international conferences and meetings with world leaders. Although she was always courteous and respectful, her sole objective was to defend the poor and promote the value of life. Even when standing before great personalities, her message remained simple and direct. Love for one's neighbor is the path to true peace. While admired by many, Teresa also faced criticism. Some accused her of not addressing the structural causes of poverty or of accepting donations from controversial figures. However, Teresa always responded with humility, explaining that her work was focused on alleviating immediate suffering and that she left other issues in God's hands. Her mission was to love and care for the most needy, trusting other matters to divine providence. The charisma of Saint Teresa of Calcutta attracted people of all faiths. She believed that, regardless of one's religion, service to the poor was a universal duty. During her life, Teresa was invited to work in Muslim, Hindu, and Christian countries, and she was always welcomed for her unconditional dedication to the common good. She treated everyone with equal respect and dignity. Although deeply Catholic, Teresa understood that love was a language everyone could understand. She often said that the true path to peace in the world was to love everyone as Christ loved. Her message was universal and reached people of different faiths and cultures. Teresa's life demonstrated that holiness is within everyone's reach, no matter where they come from. In her old age, Teresa of Calcutta began to face health problems. She suffered heart attacks and sometimes had to temporarily step back from her activities. Yet her inner strength remained unshaken. Even when weakened, she continued to visit the homes of the missionaries of charity and encouraged her sisters to persevere in their mission. In 1997, shortly before her death, Teresa stepped down as Superior General of the congregation, passing leadership to one of her sisters. She knew her health no longer allowed her to lead the work as before, but she trusted that God would continue to guide the missionaries of charity. Teresa of Calcutta always understood that the work was God's, not hers. On September 5, 1997, Saint Teresa of Calcutta passed away in her beloved city of Calcutta, surrounded by the sisters of her congregation. Her death was deeply felt around the world. Crowds gathered to pay homage to the woman who had dedicated her life to the poorest for so many decades. However, her death was not an end but the beginning of a new chapter in her work, which continued to grow and flourish. After her death, many called for Teresa's canonization, recognizing her as a living saint. Her beatification process began quickly, and in 2003, she was beatified by Pope John Paul II, declared Blessed Teresa of Calcutta. The Church officially recognized her holiness, but for millions of people she had been a saint long before. Teresa of Calcutta was officially canonized on September 4, 2016, during the pontificate of Pope Francis. The ceremony was an emotional moment for the Catholic world, but also for all those who had been touched by the life and work of this extraordinary woman. Saint Teresa of Calcutta was officially recognized as a saint, but her mission continues through her sisters and all those who follow her example. Saint Teresa of Calcutta left us a legacy of love and service. Her life shows us that holiness is not found in great deeds, but in small acts of love done with great dedication. She lived the gospel message intensely, teaching us that we are all called to serve others with unconditional love, regardless of our condition. Today, the missionaries of charity continue to grow and expand their mission. They are present in more than 130 countries, bringing relief to the most needy and spreading the message of love and service of their founder. The spirit of Saint Teresa lives on in each of these sisters, who, like her, dedicate their lives to serving the poorest. Saint Teresa of Calcutta teaches us that at the heart of the gospel is the call to love our neighbor as ourselves. She reminds us that true peace can only be achieved when we recognize the dignity of every human being and are willing to serve, especially those who suffer the most. Her life is a living testimony that Christ's love can transform the world. Her example is also a reminder that through prayer and trust in God, we can overcome even the greatest difficulties. Teresa was not a woman free from challenges and trials, but her strength came from her union with Christ. She teaches us that, even in moments of great suffering, we can find strength and peace by surrendering to God's will. Saint Teresa of Calcutta is an icon of Christian faith lived to its fullest. Her life, dedicated to service and prayer, continues to inspire millions around the world, showing that true greatness lies in becoming small and serving with humility and love. For us, her story is an invitation to seek holiness in everyday life. Whether in the family, at work, or in the community, we can all do our part by spreading Christ's love and compassion, following the example of the Saint of Calcutta. Saint Teresa's life also reminds us that holiness is not reserved for a few, but is a universal calling. All of us, in any condition, are called to love and serve others, especially the poorest and neediest. Teresa shows us that holiness is within our reach if we live with true love. Her legacy lives on not only in the missionaries of charity, but in every person who decides to make a small gesture of love and compassion in the world. She inspires us to see Christ in every person, especially in the poor and marginalized, and to act with hearts full of mercy. Saint Teresa of Calcutta is a clear example that faith in action can transform lives. Her story is a powerful reminder that when we surrender completely to God's love, He can work wonders through us. May her life continue to inspire us and motivate us to seek holiness by serving others with joy and dedication. The life of Saint Teresa of Calcutta teaches us that true value is not in material possessions, but in the capacity to love and serve. Teresa had no riches, but she had a heart full of love for God and others. That love drove her, and her example continues to be a source of inspiration for those who seek to live more generously and selflessly. The spirit of service that Saint Teresa cultivated in her congregation also spread beyond the missionaries of charity. Countless people around the world were inspired to follow in her footsteps and create initiatives of charity and assistance to the poorest. Even outside of the religious context, many recognize the importance of serving others as the path to a meaningful life. Teresa of Calcutta believed that every act of charity, no matter how small, could have a profound impact. She often said, "It is not how much we do, but how much love we put into what we do." This simple but profound teaching transformed hearts and changed lives by showing that anyone can make a difference, even with limited resources. Her approach was also revolutionary in affirming that the true fight against poverty was not just economic but spiritual. Teresa believed that loneliness, abandonment, and lack of love were even more devastating forms of poverty. She dedicated her life to fighting these forms of misery, offering not just food and shelter, but also human warmth and compassion. In addition to the missionaries of charity sisters, Teresa's work also gave rise to other congregations and volunteer initiatives. Many laypeople felt called to participate in her mission, helping in her homes around the world. Saint Teresa always welcomed anyone who wished to contribute, regardless of their religion or beliefs. Throughout her life, Teresa of Calcutta met with world leaders, celebrities, and politicians, but she never allowed herself to be distracted from her primary mission. Even at major events or meetings, her mind and heart were always with the poor. She frequently asked for donations or help for the charitable works she was involved in, and her charisma was such that many responded to her requests. Teresa's love for the poorest reflected her deep relationship with God. She firmly believed that in serving the needy, she was serving Christ himself. In one of her speeches, she said, "At the end of our lives, we will not be judged by the diplomas we have received, how much money we have made, or how many great things we have done. We will be judged by, I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was naked, and you clothed me. I was homeless, and you took me in." This spirituality, centered on Matthew's Gospel, was the foundation of all her work. For Teresa, every act of service was an opportunity to love Jesus in his most humble form: the poor, the sick, the marginalized. She saw Christ in every person she met, and this faith-driven perspective pushed her forward, even in the face of difficulties. Saint Teresa also had a profound respect for human suffering. She did not see suffering as something to be avoided at all costs, but as an opportunity for spiritual growth. However, this did not mean that she did not fight to relieve people's pain. On the contrary, she dedicated her life to this cause, but always with the understanding that suffering could bring people closer to Christ. The foundation of the Missionaries of Charity Sisters was not Teresa's only major accomplishment. In 1963, she founded the Missionary Brothers of Charity, with the same mission of serving the poor. Later, in 1976, she created the contemplative branch of the Missionaries of Charity for those who wished to dedicate themselves more intensely to prayer while supporting the work of the sisters through intercession. Teresa of Calcutta had an integrated view of spiritual life and practical work. For her, prayer and service were deeply connected. She believed that prayer provided the strength to serve, and that service, in turn, was a form of living prayer. This active and contemplative spirituality became a distinctive mark of her congregation and inspired many to follow her example. Saint Teresa's life is a clear testimony to the importance of trusting in God. From the earliest days of her mission, she lived without material resources, relying completely on divine providence. Whenever challenges arose, Teresa believed that God would provide what was needed to continue the work. And indeed, throughout her life, she witnessed countless miracles of providence. At critical moments, when food, medicine, or space for the needy were lacking, unexpected help would arrive. Teresa saw these interventions as signs that God was blessing her work, and she continued to trust even when circumstances seemed impossible. Her unwavering faith is an example for all who face difficulties in their own lives. Another notable aspect of Teresa's life was her capacity to forgive. She often faced opposition and criticism, both from outside and within the church. Yet Teresa never held on to grudges. On the contrary, she always responded with humility and love. She once said, "If you are humble, nothing will touch you, neither praise nor shame, because you know who you are." Teresa's humility was one of her greatest virtues. Even when she was hailed as one of the most influential women in the world, she always saw herself as a servant of God, with nothing special about her. For her, everything she did was the result of God's grace, and she constantly attributed all credit to Him. This attitude of humility is a powerful lesson for all of us, who often seek recognition for our actions. In her travels around the world, Teresa of Calcutta also spread the importance of prayer and Marian devotion. She had a deep devotion to Our Lady and frequently prayed the Rosary, both in moments of silence and during her daily activities. She believed that the Mother of God was a constant source of intercession and protection in her work. Teresa's devotion to Mary was something she passed on to her sisters. In the homes of the missionaries of charity, it was common to see images of Our Lady, and the sisters were encouraged to turn to Mary in all their needs. Teresa saw Mary as the perfect example of humility, obedience, and love for God, and she sought to imitate these virtues in her own life. Although Saint Teresa of Calcutta lived an extraordinary life, she always affirmed that anyone could follow the path to holiness. She often said that it was not necessary to do great things, but only to do good in small daily actions. This simple yet profound advice is one of the greatest lessons we can learn from her life. Teresa's life is also an example of how love can transform the world. In an era marked by conflicts, inequality, and poverty, she showed that love, manifested in concrete actions, can bring peace and healing. She believed that world peace began with individual acts of kindness and compassion, and that each of us can contribute to a better world through love for others. Teresa often said, "We cannot all do great things, but we can do small things with great love." This phrase became a mantra for many who follow her, reminding us that even if we cannot change the world alone, we can change someone's world with a simple act of kindness. Saint Teresa of Calcutta lived a life marked by miracles. Many of these miracles occurred during her lifetime while she served the poor and the sick. But even after her death, countless people reported receiving graces through her intercession. These miracles are a sign that her mission continues in heaven, where she intercedes for those who invoke her with faith. One of the most notable miracles attributed to Teresa was the inexplicable healing of an Indian woman who suffered from an abdominal tumor. This healing was one of the miracles required for her beatification in 2003. The woman, who had prayed asking for Teresa's intercession, was completely healed, something the doctors could not explain scientifically. Another miracle, which led to her canonization, was the healing of a Brazilian man who suffered from multiple brain tumors. His family prayed intensely for Teresa's intercession, and against all odds he was healed. This miracle was investigated and approved by the Church, being one of the signs that led to her canonization in 2016. These miracles are just a few of the many reports of graces received by those who ask for Saint Teresa of Calcutta's intercession. She remains a source of inspiration and spiritual help for millions of people worldwide. Her life and work not only touched hearts during her lifetime, but continue to impact deeply even today. Saint Teresa's canonization was a moment of great joy for the Church and the world. She is an example that holiness is not reserved only for those living in monasteries or convents, but is possible anywhere, even on the poorest and most difficult streets. Teresa showed that holiness can be lived in simple and humble service to others. Saint Teresa of Calcutta is a beacon of hope for those who feel lost or abandoned. Her life shows us that with faith, love, and perseverance, we can overcome any obstacle and bring light to the darkness of the world. Her example challenges us to do more, to love more, and to serve with greater dedication. Teresa's story is an invitation for all of us. She calls us to look beyond our own needs and extend a hand to our neighbor. Her example shows us that when we serve others with love, we are serving God Himself. And in the end, it is these small acts of love that make the difference. Today, her legacy continues to live on through the missionaries of charity and all those who follow her example of service. The world has changed much since Teresa began her mission, but the needs remain the same. There are still poor, sick, and marginalized people who need our love and care. And Teresa's example continues to be a guiding light. Saint Teresa of Calcutta left us with a clear message. We are all called to love, not in an abstract way, but concretely through service to our neighbor. Her life is a testament that when we put love into action, we can transform the world, one heart at a time. May we follow her example and seek holiness through love and service, as she did. Saint Teresa of Calcutta, pray for us.